Good morning. It is 8:30. I'll go ahead and call this morning's meeting of the Clay County Board of Commissioners to order. The first item on the agenda is an approval of the agenda. I would ask on number 7, just a clarification. In the memo, there are 2 requests for action, and in the board packet, we technically just had a request for approval of the resolution. The second item would be request approval of out-of-state travel.
Move to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the amended agenda from Commissioner Gross,
Second.
and a second from Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Citizens to be heard this morning. Are there any citizens wishing to address the board on anything that is not on the agenda? Any citizens to be heard? Steve, have we had any requests to do this virtually?
We have not, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The next item is our employee recognitions. Okay, the first person this morning is Larry Young. Good morning, Larry. Larry, today we're recognizing you for your 25 years of outstanding service to Clay County and its citizens. Thank you so much for all the work that you've done over that time. We appreciate it. Holly?
I'll say a few words. Larry, in his 25 years with Clay County, he's worked in our income maintenance unit as well as our home and community-based services unit. There's lots of great work qualities I can say about Larry, but the couple that stand out for me the most are he's always willing to go above and beyond for the people that he works with as well as his coworkers. So thank you, Larry, for all your hard work, and congratulations.
Katie. Morning. Morning. Katie, this plaque is given to you in grateful recognition for the 25 years of service to Clay County and its citizens. Thank you so much for the work that you do. We appreciate it. And Carrie?
Katie, 25 years, but I think a good majority of that time you've been a supervisor. And I think everybody under you who has ever worked under you have, I might cry, but have just flourished because they've been under you. You have been a amazing role model for not only myself, but everybody over there. So, thank you, yes.
Next item this morning is the approval of the payment of bills and vouchers.
Move to approve.
Motion from Commissioner Gross to approve the payment of bills and vouchers.
Second.
A second from Commissioner Kaylee. Any further discussion? All those in favor of this motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. The minutes are presented from the August 16th board meeting.
Move to approve the minutes.
A motion from Commissioner Gross to approve the August 16th board meeting minutes.
Second.
A second from Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. The minutes from August 23rd.
Move for approval.
A motion from Commissioner Gross to approve, a second from Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. This morning, we would like to acknowledge an anonymous donation in the amount of $5,707 for the rifle-rated ballistic shield. This will be used in the sheriff's department for protection in active shooter events. Thank you so much for the huge generosity from the individual or organization to purchase that. We surely appreciate it. Next item on the agenda this morning is an update on the FM area diversion project. We have with us this morning Joel Paulson, the Executive Director of the Metro Flood Diversion. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioners. I wanted to provide an update this morning just on some future governance changes that we'll be experiencing or anticipating at the authority. I'll give a little bit of background and then I'll jump into the anticipated changes. Over the last year, the Diversion Authority Board has engaged in a governance committee and sessions to determine what the best structure looks like during implementation of the diversion project now that we're moving into full-scale construction. There were a number of the committees that were looked at. Right now, for the county's awareness, there's 4 committees of the diversion board. There's an agricultural subcommittee, a land committee, a public outreach, and a finance committee. And all those are codified in the joint powers agreement that the authority has with Clay County. 2 of those committees, one of which has not met for about 3 or 4 years, the agricultural committee, was identified that most of our policy work on the agricultural side with providing prevented plant insurance and supplemental crop insurance for producers in the upstream mitigation area. Most of those policies have pretty much been implemented, and we have almost delivered the final product to the end users. And so the committee just didn't really need to serve a purpose anymore. And then the second committee, the Public Outreach Committee, has really changed quite drastically as we went from project development to now project implementation. And so those 2 committees were decided by the board to move forward with condensing their duties and moving it over to what will be referred to as a planning committee, which will be made up of representatives from the member entities of the JPA. That change hasn't happened yet. We do anticipate consideration of that at the next board meeting. And so certainly I'm just reaching out to the local member entities, making them aware of the discussions that are taking place. If there's any comments or concerns or questions, certainly here to answer any of those. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll open it up for any comments or questions that the board might have.
Thank you, Joel. Questions or comments? Certainly, Joel, I might have a comment. I think as someone who represents an area that's been affected and will be continuing to be affected, I think part of the concerns that I have is to maintain an avenue for concerns or landowners to go to address those concerns. The committees that have been in place have served a really good purpose in terms of making sure that we're addressing those kind of at the micro level before it goes to the whole board. And I think what I'm hearing from you is that the avenue for that will be that planning route. And if there's any item for whatever reason that we miss, landowners can still go to that in terms of addressing it and making sure there's an elected level response. I certainly appreciate how we're trying to condense things in terms of going forward, but folks still want to be able to go to an elected level person to address those concerns. And the only piece that I didn't hear, I know that the cemetery committee has not met for a certain amount of time. Will there still, you didn't address the cemetery piece in terms of dissolving those committees. Will that still be standing?
Madam Chair, these are great questions. So I think I heard 2 questions there. I'll attempt to answer both of them. So the first one, we obviously want to make it as easy for landowners as possible to engage with elected officials. Right now, most of that work is being done by the MCC JPA, which is a JPA between Clay County and Moorhead. And folks, there is time for individuals to address that board without items being on the agenda at those meetings. We didn't necessarily have that at the Public Outreach Committee and the Land Committee and some of the subcommittees of the board. However, there has been past instances where landowners have come and voiced their concern. Most of that work is happening at Cass Joint and MCC JPA, and that will continue to be maintained. We will continue to, it's anticipated that the board will continue to have the Land Committee, but the Land Committee will only meet if there's policy-related issues to help guide MCC JPA and Cass Joint. And some of those might involve landowners, which would be incorporated into the meeting as necessary. Ultimately, the Planning Committee will make recommendations to the board make those recommendations back to MCC JPA, Cass County Joint, for any policy changes related to the property acquisition that's taking place within Clay County. So there's still opportunities at the board level, at Land Committee, and at MCC JPA. Public outreach was really more of, it just got to be an update every month.
Right.
So we figured we could wrap that into the Planning Committee, and then the Planning Committee could deal with all real policy related items and make those recommendations back to the DA board and MCC JPA. So kind of, obviously, it's complicated with
Agreed.
all
No.
of the different boards and entities out there.
And I think that the question was maybe more for the public than the board members. Commissioner Campbell and Ebinger have updated us on kind of the avenues that you're steering. And I do appreciate that there's a Clay County or a Minnesota a joint board and a North Dakota joint board for folks to go to with questions.
I'll attempt to answer the cemetery question as well, because I think that's important. All the cemetery policies were codified in the settlement agreement with the upstream group. And so since that time, we are required to report back on an annual basis the work that we've done to meet the objectives contained within the settlement agreement. So far, we're moving forward with all the cemeteries that had been defined in that settlement agreement. And we found acceptable mitigation at the local level with the cemetery boards. And so we continue to work through those. There isn't any real policy-related items that have been coming out of those discussions. In the cemetery, it was actually a subcommittee of the Land Committee, I believe, or the board. I can't remember, Kevin, maybe.
I think it was the lands because I was on it.
It is lands. And so that subcommittee just hadn't met for many years prior to the settlement agreement and all of the legal issues that were taking place. So it wasn't ever a formal committee codified in the JPA. It was something the DA board had decided we need to put some policy around that. Most of that work has already been done, and then everything that we've agreed to has been really codified in the settlement agreement. So it's more of staff level implementation at this point. But if we were ever to reach an impasse with a cemetery board on how to mitigate for the project, and we needed policy advice, we would bring that to the Land Committee.
Great.
Yeah.
Commissioner Campbell.
So Joel, you started off by saying that we're moving more into a construction phase, and I think through all of the different policy or all the different committees we've had, we've tried to recognize all of the different issues. Whether it's how you deal with organic land and all these other things, and we've tried to put all of those into policies. Of course, we don't always have the wisdom of Solomon to get everything in place at all times. So, going to the question that would be there, what if something comes up? And I still think that we do have the ability for citizens and those impacted, especially because they all have their own landowner agents that they work with. They become their voice, whether it comes to the MCC JPA or the Cass County Joint Resource District, and awful lot of other mechanisms. And if you notice, we're not terminating the Land Management Committee. Right. It's kind of in a hiatus and kind of as needed type of a deal. But we firmly believe that most of those issues have been resolved. But going forward and assuming now that all, like, we've got a significant number of all of our easements in place and acquisitions, we're still working on a number. But can you just briefly talk to the board a little bit about the dispute resolution board? Because I think that's an important piece to maybe what Commissioner Mosier was going after too, is that what rights will they have when this is done and when the project is implemented? Can you just talk about that?
Hey, absolutely, Commissioner Campbell. And so through the formation of all of the different policies, as you mentioned on the land side, we did reach out to local area counties for representation on the dispute resolution board, which would really be put into place after the project is operational. But if there were any unanticipated issues related to, say, the flowage easements or environmental monitoring easements, or really any property rights where we operate the project and the operational effects of the project are different than what was anticipated, and the landowner has a claim against the authority for more damages, more than likely in this case, they would be able to go to the dispute resolution board, which is made up of appointed people from the counties along the Red River from south to north. And the board would be created surrounding an issue. So somebody would come forward and make a claim, then we would pull in appointed members from the different counties along the Red River. That would be in a different geographic location than where the dispute was coming from. And there'd be a 3-member dispute resolution board that would determine if there were damages or if there were more damages, and then what those were. And then at that point, hopefully we could resolve the situation regarding what it was. But it's really a fail-safe to allow landowners to always have an avenue outside of the court system to be able to resolve disputes as cost effectively as possible without really getting attorneys involved in those sorts of things. We put the issue in front of appointed people from the counties. They're supposed to be impartial, have some level of understanding of property related issues, but really that's the only thing that we've asked for in the dispute resolution board. So,
Questions? So, once there is official action on the committees, we'll need to address our committee assignments at this level. So just making sure that we're communicating with Steve to tweak the committee portfolios as needed for the commissioners.
That's correct, Madam Chair. So once the action is taking place, we'll work with Steve to ensure that he knows the number of representatives that need to be appointed from Clay County to the new planning committee, and then you guys will have to take action on that.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Thank you, Joel.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Joel.
Thank you.
Item 3 today is a request to fill an upcoming vacancy for Child Support Officer. We have Rhonda Porter with us, our Social Service Director, and Supervisor Sandy Thorne. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. We have several items on the agenda today, so we'll try to be efficient with each of them.
Thank you.
The first one we have is, we have a retirement. Juan Martinez from our Child Support Division is retiring at the end of January after 30 years, and so we're sorry to see him go, but excited for him as well. He may end up backing up some of his time with some vacations, so we're not exactly sure what his last day in the office will be, but at this point, we're planning the end of January. We thought we would get ahead of filling his position because we do anticipate there may be some internal movement, and that always takes time, so we're before the board today. We're thankful that he gave us such a great notice.
Yeah.
But we're here before the board to ask to replace his position. And Sandy could talk a little bit about what his position involves.
So Juan focuses on modifying child support orders. That's something that Minnesota is taking very seriously for the last about 10 or 15 years, trying to make sure that obligations are based on what a person's actual ability is rather than something that's very old and out of date. So it's better for the families, much better for the children, and more fair to both of the parties. So his focus is on getting those processed as quickly as possible and making orders correct.
Okay, board questions.
I move approval of the request
Commissioner Campbell?
with
would-
backfill.
Thank you. Commissioner Campbell makes a motion to approve the request with the backfill, a second from Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The request is granted.
Thank you.
The next item, number 4, would be request of ARPA funding for an adult intake and MnChoices position for 2023. We have Supervisor Jessica with as well now.
Okay, I'll kick us off on this one just to refresh the background for this position. Back in March, we came before the board after going to the ARPA committee for approval to hire a social work position that would have some shared duties. Half of the position would be adult intake, the other half would be doing MnChoices assessments. That half for the MnChoices assessments is revenue generating, so we were only requesting ARPA funds for the other half of the position. That was approved, and it was approved for 1 year with the second year approval pending. We did hire that position. She started on May 11th of 2022, and we went back to the ARPA committee to request approval of funding to just finish out the calendar year 2023. So we would have at least, a year and a half under our belt with the position. So the ARPA committee, I believe, did approve that those additional months in 2023, which was an amount of $21,627 that we needed to carry it through the full calendar year. So that is what we're here requesting approval for, the ARPA funds.
Commissioner Campbell?
Madam Chair and board members, we did talk about this in ARPA, Commissioner Mojo and I, and we really felt, when there were several of these that we did there was a 2-year request, and we reserved 1 year's worth of ARPA money up front with the idea in mind that we would then review the positions and see how it's been going to see if the second year should be done. And so all of these positions seem to be having different hire dates. And so what our ARPA committee did, and you're seeing that in a couple of others today as well, that we've recommended that we continue funding those positions that we're talking about today through December of 2023. And so with that, then Darren will be providing a new updated what's left available in ARPA based on these decisions today. Now, keep in mind that those dollars will then be reserved, but it still becomes when they hire them. If they don't hire them, say till November, December, then that ARPA dollar will be adjusted, or that could go back. Those funds could go back to ARPA at the end of December of 2023. That's kind of what we talked about in our ARPA committee. So we fully support that on these positions that we've reviewed, and so.
Right, and in terms of tracking, because of the hire dates, to have them all end at a solid time was the most helpful in terms of budgeting going forward. Certainly, these are very, very needed positions, and there's important work happening from them. Board?
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion from Commissioner Gross to approve the request. a second from Commissioner Kaylee. Any further discussion?
I guess I would comment, as a placeholder, I did add this as a new item in my 2023 budget, so then that we could remove.
Right, and thanks for clarifying that, because that will result, you're not the only department that will come from, so in terms of internal discussion, we'll make sure and edit that piece. We did talk about that at ARPA. Thank you. A motion and a second for support. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Thank you. Yep. Item 5 today is a request for new financial services position for 2023. Financial Supervisor Jamie Stewart now. Good morning.
Okay, yes, our next item is, and I did include this as a new item in the 2023 budget. And I think there are several documents that were sent out in your packet relative to this item. We have a summary sheet and then PowerPoint presentation, and the third document just kind of laid out the tasks of what each supervisor would be with the lead workers. So basically, just to go through the summary sheet, some of you may recall, but back in 2014, we actually had 2 supervisors and 1 lead worker for the financial division. When we had a retirement, we changed that structure and went to 1 supervisor and then added 2 additional leads. And actually, at that time, I think we had reduced 1 staff person to kind of make it all work out. But since that time, we've been plugging along, and the PowerPoint document will really highlight, I think, visually the increases in the program demands in this division and the additional staff that we've added over time. It's become quite unmanageable for 1 supervisor. I think we've probably known this for a period of time, have tried to make as many adjustments as we could, but I think the timing is important for us right now to look at that 2nd supervisor. We have 15 different programs that we administer in this unit. As I said, the caseloads have grown. The policies in this area are complex and ever-changing. There's just a real need for managing all of that information and making sure that it's getting down to all of the staff. We have 29 staff in this unit. That includes the 3 leads, 26 eligibility workers, and then Jamie would be the 30 staff that we have. You'll also note on the summary sheet, I did reach out to some similar sized counties to get a sense of what their structures are, and you'll see that noted there. Our staff to supervisor ratio is just simply too high. We need to that's one of the impetus for the request. This is a position that does receive about 52% federal financial participation to pay for it. So you'll note at the bottom, the anticipated levy request would be $42,100. That does not consider what COLA adjustment the board may approve for 2023, so that would need to be adjusted based on that. Maybe I'll let Jamie, would you want to just talk a little bit about the PowerPoint? We don't need to go into it in detail, but I think visually it kind of explains what we're seeing.
It just kind of explains that over the years that we have increased in all programs, especially the last couple of years. When you look at the families, the diversionary work program, the 2nd one on there, does look like it decreased, but there was a waiver that eliminated that program during COVID. So that is just coming back into play. Otherwise, the general assistance program, the MSA program, the GRH program, and the SNAP program, the healthcare programs, they're all increasing, along with the long-term care program. in the childcare too. It did decrease over COVID, but the numbers are starting to increase again. The emergency funding in both the family emergency and the general assistance emergency have decreased, but due to all the COVID funding that's been available for clients, we haven't had to utilize our monies.
Yeah, and we do anticipate starting to see those applications increase. I think you're already seeing a bit of that now.
In regards to the allotment that the county has, is that something, a use it or lose it? Are you able to carry forward balances not utilized in 2020 and 2021 for future use?
It's a use it or lose it situation.
Okay, thank you,
And then they disperse it over the rest of the state.
thank you.
Yeah, I think, again, the family emergency assistance program is kind of locally developed, and then we submit it to the State Department of Human Services, and they approve our plan. So every county has different plans in terms of how they use emergency assistance. So, but Jamie's correct. If it's underutilized, it goes back into the pot with DHS.
Thank you.
So are we trying to get more people into this program, or how does the program work? I mean, are there more people applying for it? Evidently there is, I mean, but are those people that have been living here, or is that new people coming into the county that applying for these funds, or?
It's a combination of both. The standards are also increasing, which makes more people eligible for the benefits. So therefore, we have more applicants due to that too.
The, starting September 1st, the SNAP program, the eligibility for that changes, so we do anticipate increased applications for the SNAP program as well. So, yeah, as Jamie said, eligibility requirements, some of the programs have, residency requirements. They've got to prove that they live here in Clay County, and most of the programs have asset and income limits, and so depending on the program, depends on how they determine eligibility.
Do we ever get anybody off the program?
We do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. One thing that these documents don't show is the churn. These are average monthly caseload sizes, and so you can see they increase. But it doesn't necessarily show when somebody applies and they're not determined eligible. Am I correct in that? So there's a lot of work, much more work than what's really showing in these graphs.
We do get people off the program. I marched in there with a 3-year-old at one point and used SNAP benefits, so it's lending a hand in terms of when people need it, and the hope is that it will allow them to move forward with their life once they find a different situation. So yes, that's how it's intended to work.
Yep. All right.
Yes, Commissioner Campbell.
So, Rhonda or Jamie, this new position, is this gonna help relieve some of the workload of the caseworkers that we have involved, or the financial workers, or is this just gonna be another management?
Yeah. It really won't be it won't be managing a caseload. So, certainly that is a concern for us, because as you can see, the caseloads are increasing, and so that processing work is landing on their labs. However, what we're really, my belief is that we really need to be able to increase the support and the training that we're giving our staff. I think that with more opportunities to make sure that we're meeting with them, that we're reviewing the bulletins, that the teams are applying those rules consistently across the teams, and giving more time for the team leads to work individually with their teams is critical. There's no question, even our staff have said, could we add more staff instead of a supervisor? And that's valid. But we can't continue to add more staff without the proper level of supervision either, which does help the staff in doing their job. So it's definitely, we're in a bit of a quandary with managing the workload. The other thing is that we've had various FMLAs and turnover, that in some of the teams, we haven't had the opportunity to really feel the full benefit of the staffing pattern, which isn't unlike some of our other program areas. We've got 2 positions that we had turnover, and those positions now have been offered. And so I'm really hopeful over the next 6 months, we'll see our staffing pattern stabilize and give us a chance to see how the workload is managed within the staffing pattern that we have.
If I can, and forgive me, I'm just trying to understand internally some more of this. So what's the what do leads do? What's their job? What does a lead do?
Their primary position is helping train staff. They train the new staff, and then with all the changes in all the program policy and procedures, it's their responsibility to make sure their team is doing the most current process and following the most current guidelines and policies.
Just thinking outside the box, so in terms of a grade level or where they are, is a lead on a different grade than?
Yes, a lead, I want to say, is 2 grades above an eligibility worker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So sometimes we often look at what's one's ability to be promoted too in this, and it seems to me that a lead must have some sort of assistance in a supervisory role. Do they or do they not?
Well, not necessarily supervisory, but we certainly, again, the focus, as Jamie said, is training, kind of that daily support, that daily problem solving with them as they have something come in. The leads will also handle what we call privileged cases that maybe have some confidentiality issues with them, so they'll handle some of those cases as well. And they will also help the workers resolve conflict that might be occurring with an applicant, that kind of stuff. And those can escalate to a supervisor as well. The performance evaluations are done by the supervisor. Any disciplinary action is done by the supervisor, that kind of stuff. So they do have, I would say, some oversight within their team, for sure.
Commissioner Gross?
The more staff we add, are we going to add more people then onto the program? Are they going to be able to, are there some people that are not getting the funds or whatever because we don't have enough people, or?
No, if we have an applicant, we're obligated to process that application and determine their eligibility, no matter how many staff we have. We try to manage the staffing based on our caseloads so that we can be successful in processing those applications. And so, there's timeframes that we have to process applications, which Jamie knows more about. But so when we're audited by the state, they look at how long did it take you to process an application? Did you respond timely? Those kinds of things. So we try to look at our staffing pattern based on the workload so that we can serve our applicants efficiently. But we can't turn down applications.
Are you going to need backfill for this position, do you think?
It's possible, so that would be a part of the approval process.
Rhonda, in terms of the generation of about 52.15% of the cost, is there an opportunity to earn more than that going forward, or is that basically the average that you've looked back?
That is the average, yep. Yep. I had our Susan Roll with our auditors go back and look at our revenue history on these positions and what our earning potential is, and considering all the factors, that's the percentage.
Okay. Questions? Board wishes?
Move approval with backfill.
So motion to approve from Commissioner Kaylee with backfill,
Second.
second from Commissioner Ebbinger. Just to reiterate, this is for 2023. So you would not implement until January 1st.
Correct.
But this would be approving a portion of our 2023 budget before the full board action at the end of this month. That's understood. Now, understanding that it's different departments, but not departments, different channels. What was that of the amount on the last piece that you already had in your budget for a new request for
For ARPA.
for Jessica's piece? Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I had more than Darren's calculation. I had about 32,000 put in there as kind of a placeholder for that position. So that 32,000 would come out of my new request.
Okay. Any further discussion? Yes, Commissioner Campbell?
And I'm sure I'm going to state the same thing I stated the last time. We did a new request hire before the preliminary budget was done, and I'm going to vote no against this. Not that I'm against the position, but I just do not think that we should be selectively approving some new requests and not others before we get through the whole process. So this is something that's new on this board that we haven't done in the past, and I'd rather see the whole picture.
Yep, fair. The minutes will reflect that. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rhonda, since this is your last item on the agenda, and I know you don't have all of your supervisors here, but I want you to make sure and relay to your supervisors that we understand that there are unprecedented needs and times right now, and your staff just do a phenomenal job mitigating what the needs are, and the heart in which they deliver help and services are beyond. So we are so fortunate to have the staff that you have over there, and so please relay that to them.
I will, thank you. Yes, I have an amazing team. We have an amazing team.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Holly?
Okay, the last item we have is, and if you'll recall, a few weeks ago, Holly and I did come before the board to ask for a home and community-based waiver worker for this particular program area. And this position does generate revenue, which pays for itself, basically. And the conversation, based on the workload that we had shared with the board, the conversation went to, could we use more workers? I was been a little conservative as I've looked across the department and what our needs are. Holly and I went back and really looked at caseloads, and while she and her staff knew right away, of course, we need more than one based on the workload, I didn't put that forward right away, but feel comfortable doing so today. We can, in the summary sheet, you can see the workload. I did do a reach out to some similar sized counties, and I don't believe this was in your packet because I was still waiting for some responses. But the average caseload is around 60 in similar sized counties with us, and currently we're at 71 and on target to add an additional, what was that number, Holly, you had?
So we're trending for 2022 to have an additional.
Say, Holly, can you turn your microphone on?
Sorry about that. We're trending for 2022 to have an additional 150 new cases this year, which is up by 20 from 2021.
So this is case management, just as a reminder, this is case management services for individuals with a disability. So they're applying for Medicaid waivers to help support them in their home and community to remain at home. So the staff provide the case management, they coordinate with community providers, families to assure that services are available to their loved ones who need services. As we shared last time, with some of the workforce shortages that we're seeing in the community, there is more and more reliance and need for the case managers. The intensity of their work is increasing because families are struggling getting PCA services, for example, or home health kinds of services that maybe weren't an issue as much pre-pandemic. But the staff are really struggling with the workforce shortages and how that's impacting our families. So that's an impetus for this as well as just the increasing number on our caseloads.
Commissioner Gross?
Are we presently using overtime to cover this stuff, or?
We are not.
Well, thanks for going back to the drawing board. I know that I had asked if it was revenue generating to cover what the cost was. Why were we only looking at one? And certainly if you have looked at the numbers and feel as though that will have no levy impact, I do appreciate you bringing that back for the board's discussion and deliberation. Any further questions, comments from the board?
Move to approve.
A motion from Commissioner Gross to approve the request,
Second.
and a second from Commissioner Ebinger. Further discussion.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Campbell.
Yeah, I'm gonna be consistent with how I vote on these things, and the last time there was this is basically a new request for a new position again. But however, this one is levy neutral. And if you want to bring forward, if any department wants to bring forward grants and opportunities where we can make services better for the county, I'm all for it, especially when we can see it done through grant opportunities. So I'm going to support this one because it's levy neutral and it's not going to, it doesn't have any impact like any other department's new requests have on our levy. So just want to make that clear.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, Rhonda?
No? Thank you.
Okay. Were we anticipating that Kurt would be, there he is. Kurt. Yeah, come on up. Item number 7 this morning is a request for an approval of the resolution 2022-25 for your operational enhancement grant program, and there also was a request to approve out-of-state travel.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so which one do you want to do first?
The resolution's good.
Okay.
This, every year, last 2 years, they've been doing it by internet, so we just approved the resolution. That's for that enhancement grant of the $12,500. I just closed out 2022, so this is the start for 2023. When this is approved, I will send that in and then digitally sign for the county. So basically, the resolution is giving me authority for the operational grant to sign and approve and
Okay,
move forward.
board?
Move approval?
A motion to approve resolution 2022-25 for the operational grant from Commissioner Kaylee, a second from Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. And then the out-of-state travel request.
Next June, I know you probably want to see me more up here, but next June, Madison, Wisconsin National Training, CEUs for myself and Jennifer.
Okay.
It'll be a little warmer than, a little cooler than San Antonio this last year.
A little more boring.
Yeah, but more boring, yeah. Isn't there a lake or something over there?
Any further discussion? Board wishes.
Move approval.
A motion to approve by Commissioner Kaylee.
Second.
A second from Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried.
Very
Before
nice.
Kurt leaves, can I mention something? I was out doing a lot of door knocking this weekend, Kurt, and I came along a row of a whole bunch of citizens that were veterans.
Oh.
And I heard nothing but good things about you and your office. It's small but mighty, and you do a lot of really incredible work
Nice to
to
hear.
help our citizens and our former service members. Thank you so
We
much.
try to take care of them here.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Appreciate that.
a question for you. Were you recently at a St. Paul Saints game?
Yes, Friday night.
Do you want to explain what you're doing
There's a
there?
picture going around, yeah.
Do you want to explain what you're doing there?
I was nominated for Hometown Hero for my service in our office, so the continued work after service, so,
Were you recognized for something then?
yeah, Hometown Hero. yes.
Good for you.
Yeah, I gotta go on the field, and my family left me at the gate. We're not going out.
So,
And then I had a camera like 5 feet in front of me. I didn't know what to do with myself.
congratulations.
Boy,
Congratulations, Kurt.
Yeah, there was pictures on, I think, over the weekend. Yeah, great. I should send that, you can forward that, yeah.
It's been forwarded.
So if anybody has an opportunity to maybe to stop in and say hello to some of our folks, whether it's at the Legion clubs or the VFW clubs, going along with what Commissioner Cayley said, you're like a rock star to those folks, and
Yeah, I do appreciate it.
we're lucky to have you here in Clay County.
Did I have Rays on there as the?
No, don't, don't.
I didn't type that.
Yeah, don't push your luck.
I just want to know who this young man is. in this
What?
picture.
Oh, that's it. It did get forwarded. Unbelievable. Did you just do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could we get that up on the?
Yeah.
It was,
Yes,
it was
Commissioner.
Sunday morning, and then Darren Brook did something, and then Steve responded. I'm like, oh, God. So there's a little story behind that picture. That's my basic training picture. I don't really have much pictures, but I did have a nice one in Iraq with my holster and my 9mm, the ziggurat behind me, and I found that one on Wednesday. So I emailed, I say, can you switch the old picture with the
Yeah.
cold sore out with this strapping
Yeah.
young man with a weapon? And the ladies said, yes, we send it to our board people, our Megatron
Right.
people. Cool. So I get out there, and what picture shows up? Boom, cold sore. So then I deployed with a couple guys that came up to our little suite, and they say, hey, you know this guy? The guy that was in charge of the whole event said, no, we're not switching out. Leave Kurt's baby picture up there.
It's good. It's good.
So he was the one behind leaving my picture up there. So if I get time, I'll forward you the strapping young man with him.
Hey,
Yes,
it's,
they gave me a weapon. Yeah.
we're proud of you. I
Yes.
think Commissioner Evinger did have something.
Yeah, just wanted to pile on the love fest here, and
I'm feeling the love.
Kurt has been there for my wife's family, a 102-year-old veteran.
Yeah.
And things started happening real quick with his plumbing health and need for services and
Yeah.
everything else. And it was seamless, it was well done, and everybody involved is grateful. And I know you work hard, because looking at this picture, it's been some tough years, man.
Yeah. I got married in there too.
Okay, that could be part of it.
All right, now
But
we're going down.
grateful.
Stop while you're
Yes.
not ahead. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
And I did sign it, and Colleen's going to scan that resolution so you can grab it before you go. Okay, well, we are scheduled for a 5-minute break. We'll come back at 9:30. Okay, it is 9:30. We'll come back in session. We have the annual presentation and budget request from Lake Agassiz Regional Library. We have Liz Lynch, the executive director. Good morning, Liz.
Good morning. I do have a couple of handouts.
Okay.
I'd like to share if that's okay.
We do have the letter sent to our administrator in June on the request and then the preliminary budget numbers.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to tell you a little bit about what's going on at Lake Agassiz Regional Library and then to answer any questions you might have about the 2023 budget request. I do have 2 handouts that should be coming around here. Just want to make sure you're aware of them. The first one is our Arts and Cultural Heritage Fall Series brochure. These are all programs that are funded by the Legacy Amendment. This is funding that we received from the Minnesota State Legislature. We're very lucky to have a pretty fabulous legacy coordinator, Jenna Cayley, who plans all of these events. But these are fantastic programs. They provide educational opportunities, and even better than that, they really help to build communities. So I hope you can attend one of these communities or one of these events this fall. And thank you, Commissioner Cayley, for your work on planning those events. The next document that I've provided it's just simply some data from 2021. Of course, in 2020, we did see fewer people in our libraries and using our services. However, in 2021, people really started to come back in, and I can't wait to see what our data is going to be like in our statistics for 2022. It's been interesting because pre-pandemic, we had a lot of power users, I would say. Most of our power users have come back to our regional library system, but the best part is that we've really seen a lot of new people coming in because during the pandemic, well, perhaps this is why during the pandemic, we actually were able to take a moment to reevaluate our services and what is actually needed by our residents and our communities. And so we did start to offer some new services, and people are coming back in full force. So we are very excited to offer new services. I just wanted to highlight a couple of the services that we implemented. One is our Wi-Fi hotspot service. We now check out Wi-Fi hotspots for use. We also include these little comment cards with the Wi-Fi hotspots because we want to know how people are using them. And so it's interesting to get the evaluations back to find out that people are using these hotspots to take online classes, to complete degrees or certifications, to work from home, of course for entertainment as well, people working from their lake cabins. We hear all kinds of stories, but it's just kind of interesting because on more than one occasion, people have included the hotspots are a real lifesaver. So it's just also kind of a nice reminder that not everyone has internet access in their homes. We kind of make the assumption that that is the case, but not everyone wants internet access in their homes. Not everyone can afford internet access in their homes, and not everyone has a mobile device with unlimited data. So we're really happy to be able to fill that need within our 7 counties. Another new service, which hopefully will be implemented this week, I hope, fingers crossed, is that we are working on a project with Moorhead Area Public Schools to implement Laurel, Lake Agassiz Regional Library, student cards to students grades 5 through 12. And for the first time this fall, when parents registered their children for school, they were able to check a box on Power School, opting in to a library card for their child. And it's not your traditional library card where you have a piece of plastic with a barcode and a number on it. Instead, it's a virtual card, if you will. And if a student wants to gain access to materials in the library or downloadable resources, they simply just need to enter MAPS for Moorhead Area Public Schools followed by their student ID number, and can gain access to resources. So we're really trying to remove those barriers of, regarding students who just can't come into the library to get a library card, or who just maybe don't want to take the time to go through the hassle of actually coming in or registering for a library card. This way is just instant access to library services.
And Liz, I would be fascinated to know how that works and if there's future discussion to implement it the rest of our rural
Yeah,
school district.
yeah, so we're really excited about this. It's a pilot project right now with just grades 5 through 12 at Moorhead Area Public Schools. But we're really hoping that this goes well because it's a pretty simple process to integrate. And so we're really hoping that we can bring this to as many schools across our region that would be interested in participating. So, and we're also hoping that the next step would be for kindergarten through 5th grade, of course, as well, in Moorhead Area Public Schools. So we're excited about that. Any questions about our hotspots or about the Laurel student card? I would also just like to mention that during this past year, we've seen a lot of staff turnover in Lake Agassiz. And the locations in Clay County of Holly, Barnesville, and Ulen have remained steady and solid. We have not seen turnover in those locations, and those locations are still doing a great job of providing services to their communities. Also, I have to say that we are very grateful to the city of Moorhead for seeking approval for the half-cent sales tax from the Minnesota State Legislature to put on the ballot in November for a new community center and library in Lake Agassiz Regional Library headquarters. So we're very grateful that Moorhead is so supportive of our regional library system. One last thing I just wanted to mention is that last year, I want to thank the commissioners for their support of a bill or bills that we had in the Minnesota State Legislature to support regional public library funding. We were asking for a $2 million increase and a formula change at the legislature. We have not seen an increase from the Minnesota State Legislature since 2009. We have Senator Johnson, who is from our region, who is the lead author, the chief author on the bill. And so it's nice to have such support in our region. But this really affects libraries across the state. Of course, there really weren't any winners last legislative session. But I do know that across the state, we heard of a lot of support from commissioners and from AMC. And so I just really like to thank all of you who supported that initiative. Do any of you have any questions about Lake Agassiz Regional Library or?
Questions from the board? Yes, Commissioner Ebinger.
Yeah, I've just got a couple of comments. Appreciate Liz coming in. I'm on the Lake Agassiz board. I had no idea until I got on that board, and having worked as police chief in Moorhead for 12 years, I knew there were issues. I knew there were services provided at that library for people who needed it, people who were vulnerable. Had no idea how resilient the staff and the resources were to help people. I mean, it's a matter of people get jobs, people get services, people get, even the criminal justice system depends on the access to the internet that the library provides a lot of people who don't have those services. And the staff there they're almost like docents or assistants to people that come in that don't know how to navigate the system. As part of when we look at the budget, really the only increase, which is a modest one, was to go with the negotiated agreement with the union to increase salaries simply to help with retention and maintain the quality of the employees that are there. But this is a great resource for our region. And, you know, I've just, again, I've been very impressed with Liz and with all the people with Lake Agassiz since I've been brought on the board.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Commissioner Kaylee?
So admittedly, I didn't do this list this year, but last year when I looked at how much money is coming from all the different signatories and how many libraries that is supporting, for Clay County, we are getting a steal of a deal for the locations in Holly, Barnesville, Ulen, that our citizens have access to, and of course Moorhead, but Moorhead is a signatory too. And so I just want the public to know that the library really is the best deal in town for your tax dollars in what you're getting out of that just over $300,000, what you have access to as far as staff time, expertise, resources available. It's incredible.
It is pretty incredible.
Yes, Commissioner Campbell.
Looking at the member cities and counties, I see the recommended change has a different percentage based on each entity.
Yep.
Can you, is that employee related as to why that is, or what?
No.
What's the, you know, it just so that for the public's awareness, why I'm asking is, for example, what's being requested is a 2.74% increase for Clay County, which is nowadays is reasonable, but then you look at Moorhead as 2.17, and I'm just wondering why are there differences there?
Sure, so when we know what our total request is going to be from our signatories, the board makes that determination. Then we run a formula against that total number for each of our signatories. And it's based on 80% is based on where our users actually reside. And then 10% is based on population and 10% based on property value. So it's Clay County residents using all of our locations. It's not based on which library checks out the most materials. It's where our users reside. And we have a computer database called our automation system where we track all of this information very, very closely. And so if you live in Clay County, if you live in Moorhead, we're very careful to say this person resides within the city limits of Moorhead versus living outside in the county. And so when we run the Clay County numbers, we're only running the borrower numbers from the county, and we're subtracting the Moorhead folks, if that makes sense.
Commissioner Kaylee.
So how is this student card going to affect those numbers going forward, that pilot project that you just spoke about?
Good question. It is a pilot project, so we'll see how many people are actually using it, but our plan right now is when we run the numbers, we will not even include the Laurel student card numbers.
Questions? Well, as in years past, Liz, we are in the process of determining what our levy will be. Final levy, preliminary will be approved at the end of this month. So certainly there will be discussion going forward. Thank you for presenting the information for us, and thank you for the work that you do all across the region.
Thank you very much.
Item number 10 today is the requests from the Highway Department. We have our county engineer, Justin Sorum. The first item on the agenda is his approval of a bid to construct the salt sand tent at the joint facility. And we have our facilities director, Joe Olson, with as well. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. Yeah, I'll run with this first one. Just to recap, this is the capital improvement project. It's a salt sand project, which is a joint project between MnDOT and the city of Moorhead and Clay County. we are here today to ask for, as you know, we had this project approved previously a few weeks back, and what had happened is MnDOT had started the project and had found an error in the, I guess the bid submitted by the low bidder, was the wrong size tent, it was smaller. So automatically that defaulted them from the bidding process. So they had come back and asked both City of Moorhead and Clay County to approve an extra $16,266 a piece, and that would be, they're accepting the second, or the next low bidder on this project. So we discussed rebidding everything, but with that process would push us way, we wouldn't have a chance to even do it this year. So we feel it's still a decent project to move forward with. We had an original budget of $300,000, so we're still a couple thousand under that project, or under that budget. So we are, yeah, so that's, we're wanting to, so what we're asking for is to accept the low bid from Agassiz and Gouge, and move forward with them as a vendor.
Okay, so there would be incurred that additional piece, the 16,266, which is still under budget based on the
Yep.
budgeted
Original budget.
estimate,
Yep.
correct? And then with our attorney, just wanted to clarify that this is following suit for awarding of the low bid.
Yeah, yeah, and they, just a note on that too, Madam Chair, they follow, MnDOT has been following all procurement policies that satisfy ours, so, or actually, I think stricter than ours, so, yep, so.
Yes, Commissioner
Did
Gross.
Roars come back with another bid, or?
I think the way MnDOT does it, when they open the bids,
Yeah, I don't think Roars, being that was their initial bid, would be allowed unless the project was rebid to actually come back with another bid, means that
'Cause
there
it's
was
an
error
error.
in the bid.
yeah, so by doing that,
Because they would know Gustafson and Gouge's number at that point, so that wouldn't be a fair bid.
Yep.
Okay. Board?
Move to approve the new bid.
Second.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Commissioner Gross, a second from Commissioner Campbell. Any further discussion? Look forward to getting that completed.
should still be done this fall.
Yep.
Actually, we just started working on the bunkers within the tent there, so it's already underway, so.
Great. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Great.
Thank you, Board.
Item B today is an approval of the MnDOT contract number 1051249 and the supporting resolution 2022-26.
Yes, so the second item I have this morning is the approval of a cooperative construction agreement with MnDOT and the city of Barnesville. So Barnesville received $300,000 in transportation alternative federal funds. And since they are not a state aid city, we are required to be the fiscal agent for these funds. So there is no county participation in this project other than just a pass-through for the funds. So MnDOT is redoing Trunk Highway 9 through Barnesville, and this $300,000 will help cover some of Barnesville's costs for this project.
An exciting project, very needed.
I'll move to approve resolution 2022-26.
Motion to approve resolution 2022-26
Second.
and a second. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Then we do need approval of the contract.
Make that motion.
Motion from Commissioner Gross to approve the contract. A second from Commissioner Ebinger. Further discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. That should cover that item.
Yep.
Okay. Item number C today is executing a letter of support for County State Aid Highway 36 bridge replacement.
Yes, so Polk County recently took the lead on a bridge improvement grant application. So this would bundle 3 Red River bridges, including the Georgetown Bridge, Hendrum Bridge, and Neilsville Bridge. So in 2018, this same bundle was presented in a federal aid application and was unsuccessful. So this application would be to fund the bridges at 80%, and it would require a 20% local match, so 10% would come from Clay County, 10% would come from Cass. So Cass County did sign a letter of support as well. This project isn't currently shown on our 5-year plan, just because we didn't really know how we were gonna get the funds to replace it, but I think at a 10% cost, and with Polk County taking the lead on the grant application, I think it would be a really good opportunity to replace this bridge.
Commissioner Campbell.
So Clay County's proportionate share of that, would that come out of state bridge bonding dollars?
It would come out of CASA regular, but I would also apply for some of that to try to come out of bridge
So
bond.
it's not local levy dollars?
No.
So,
And I would add, I am bringing the 5-year plan to the tracking committee. I'm just gonna add this as a placeholder just to show what it would do, but I think it would be.
but we, in other words, if we amended our 5-year plan to include that $987,000, we would also be anticipating then more revenue to offset that.
Correct.
Yep.
Because the, I mean, the state, if we have more projects that we apply for, there is state bridge bonding dollars out there.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And citizens may have heard this. This was running through, I believe, the radio stations were covering this piece over the weekend. So
Yep.
anyone on the Clay County side who hadn't specifically heard about it, maybe had heard snippets about it.
Yeah, and the radio did reach out to me, and I just refrained from comment until I brought this piece forward this morning.
Well, certainly, all of those bridges are highly utilized by ag producers and general public. Appreciate your approach to coordinating with multiple counties and the states. Just another example how this region, the river doesn't define us. We really are a region, and this is just a look at the collaborative approach to addressing those needs. Board wishes.
Move for approval.
A motion to approve the letter of support from Commissioner Ebinger.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Kaylee. Further discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. And I do know you have a short timeline on that one piece, so I did
Yep, thank you.
send that to Colleen, and we'll get you the rest of it.
Perfect.
Okay.
And then I just did want to do a quick update on County State Aid 1. We are kind of running into some delays currently. CenturyLink, or now known as Lumen, has not switched over to their new line, so they are in the bottom of the ditch. So we're potentially going to see some added cost due to the untimeliness of them moving their utilities.
Okay. Do you know how long?
The last time I talked to them, they were scheduled to be completed between the 14th and 16th of September.
Okay. Campbell, did you have a question?
I'm just curious to what our recourse is. I mean, if we, when we go through the process of acquiring land necessary to do our project, because the utility has easements there, don't they still have a responsibility to have things done in a timely manner, just like our landowners do?
So this particular one was in our right-of-way, not an easement on private property. So by statute, they have to move in a timely manner.
That's kind of where I was going with this. And now all of a sudden, you're coming to us and saying that our project costs might increase because they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
So I'm curious as to what our recourse is.
And I have been working with Mike.
I think Mike
Leeser.
Leeser has been working with Justin, so we're at least exploring some different options.
And my first email it was CenturyLink at the time, was April 14th of 2020, stating the need to move. And then in November of last year, Brian Melton wrote a letter to them.
I mean, so we have documentation of some of the things we did, so I think there's some different potential things we can do if we ultimately decide to, depending on how long this ultimately goes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, we'll be in touch in regards to what that looks like.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the update.
Yep.
Item 11 is a request for ARPA funds for a full-time victim witness restorative justice position. Our County Attorney, Brian Melton. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. This, similar to with Rhonda being up here earlier, and as Commissioner Campbell stated, as you might recall, back in March, approximately February, March of last year, or excuse me, this year, we came before the board talking about restorative justice. We did secure a one-year position with the potential for the second year. The actual position got hired in July, and as I know several commissioners participated with, there's a lot of good energy around getting the restorative justice position into the schools. We had a lot of position from school members across the county, really all of them, looking forward to seeing restorative justice coming into the schools. And I know that they really appreciated both the input and the support that they were seeing from the commissioners and from the county. With that said, as we talked about in ARPA, trying to figure out the best way to fund the position. It was July through July, and then the school year, we were able to have our person in position and start working to get it ready for this school year. So it'll work through the 22-23 school year, come back around for the beginning part of the 23-24 school year, with the expectation by then we'll be able to either look to budget for remaining position and/or if there were any other ARPA funds that we want to use to continue through that remainder of the 24 school year, that's a possibility too. But we'll have some options, but this way I think it's cleaner to just end our current piece at the end of the school year of 2023, if that makes sense.
And I think that for the commission's understanding that we will still be able to have discussions in regards to how successful the work is, because we'll be able to have that look back of a full year and then go from going forward how we want to allocate funds. It would be really difficult right now to rationalize if it should be levy or ARPA funds based on the work just now starting. But I will say to have those 2-day meetings with huge community stakeholder support for commissioners, I believe, took part in those discussions, and almost, I think, all of the school districts in Clay County really feel that it's work that is, one, very, very needed, but there is such a support structure surrounding it. I'm really hopeful going forward that we're able to address some issues there. So I wholeheartedly support this request. Any further commission discussion? Yes, Commissioner Ebinger.
I attended one of the meetings, and restorative justice is in my portfolio. It's something I've been dealing with for probably 35 years as a mechanism, as a tool that we can deal with offenders. And I don't think anywhere is it more effective and needed than in the juvenile system. Listening to the school principals, vice principals, and superintendents were at the meeting I was at, kids are really coming back, and there's confusion. There's some difficulty in maintaining discipline in some instances. And this is just something, this is needed at this time more than it's ever been. So I think it's important we support it. It's a great use of ARPA because a lot of the issues that are coming into the schools are a result of the kids being remote in their classes for over a year. So particularly with the young ones that are basically coming from elementary school, now they're landing middle school without a transition phase for them. So this is timely, and I think it's a good use of funds.
I'll make a motion to support the position with the ARPA fund.
Motion from Commissioner Gross to support the position with ARPA funds. A second from Commissioner Ebinger. Further discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Thank you, Brian. Item 12 today would be a support of operation of the FMWF Chamber Ignite program with a contribution of American Rescue Plan Funds, we do have Administrator Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As this board recalls, a couple of weeks ago, we had Shannon Full, the Executive Director from the Fargo-Moorhead West Fargo Chamber, here to present on a request for 2023. Part of that request, as was in 2022, was for the potential support of the Ignite program. It's a platform which brings employers and employees, students together in the Fargo-Moorhead, and that's probably a real very too basic explanation of that program. If you recall last year, we did initially have, this is part of our preliminary levy budget in last October. It was removed at Truth and Taxation and placed in the ARPA portfolio for discussion. At that point, we've kind of determined we wanted to see what was going to happen before bringing that forward. One, with the program, two, with the need. I think we've had enough discussions over the last year. That workforce continues to be a challenge, and the ARPA committee met here this past week and felt that this was a worthy project to bring forward to help deal with that. And with that, I'll yield for any questions.
Thank you. And yes, we did have a long discussion about this at the ARPA committee last week, really feeling that workforce issues caused by the pandemic have been such an issue, but really have had the opportunity to see that Ignite program and related website job board expand, and felt that it was such an asset to the region, but there's also a huge asset to Clay County for supporting that as well. Commissioner Ebinger?
Just, it's timely. In my report, I'll be addressing the EDA press conference that the chamber held. The Greater Fargo-Moorhead, West Fargo Chamber is one of, make sure I have my numbers right, 32 grants for this EDA project that is national, coming with federal funds. There were over 500 proposals, and they've gotten $9.62 million for the EDA Good Jobs program here in this region. So, I mean, you've got an effective organization that is doing great things, and supporting the Ignite process here is going to be important. So I appreciate it's a good use of ARPA funds, and I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead and direct $50,000 from ARPA funds into the Ignite program.
Thank you. A motion from Commissioner Ebinger.
Second.
And a second from Commissioner Kaylee. We, as noted, Darren will be updating the spreadsheet in regards to, with some shifting, how everything's been allocated and earmarked to the state. And certainly there's some bigger projects that this board has earmarked some dollars for, but wanting the board to get the whole picture on what may or may not be available going forward. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Carried. Item 13 is also with Mr. Larson, the request to approve an allocation for technology replacement needs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we have discussed a great deal over the last few years, we had to look and change how we operated as a government during the pandemic. One of those pieces was making sure that our employees were mobile and could continue to provide service under any circumstances. During the CARES funding, this board approved over $500,000 of technology upgrades to ensure both our employees and things such as county government, this board could continue to move forward with. And with that challenge, we provided over 200 laptops to our employees to ensure that those that were able to work remotely were able to do so. Having said that, the challenge is a laptop, the life expectancy is about 3 years. It's hard to believe that we're almost at that standpoint. And so in 2023, there were levy dollars that were put aside to begin repurchasing the additional laptops and technology needed. I believe Commissioner Gross at that point recommended, why don't we look at this as we're disqualified for an ARPA funding mechanism? And so we brought that back to our ARPA committee, which is why we're here today. We're requesting that $95,000 be set aside of the American Rescue Act funds to purchase technology to allow our employees to continue to provide service in the event that we have any additional needs with COVID. That I'd yield for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Board discussion. Board wishes.
Are all these, how many laptops are we planning on replacing, or, are they all in need of replacing, or are we just buying a supply of laptops?
No, Rory and his staff will be buying them as needed. And so what we did do is he had allocated that $95,000 with the assumption that a significant portion of those will need to be updated next year.
And we are in the process of creating a cycle and how those will come. There will be a budgeted item in terms of replacing and going with that piece. But in order to reduce such a hit on the levy currently and allow us some more time to phase that in, this was what the request was.
Okay, you're saying that they have to replace about every 3 years. I mean, we're not buying, did I understand you? We're not buying them all at one time, or?
No, correct. We'll buy them as they
okay.
phase out.
Discussion? Wishes?
Make a motion to approve.
The motion from Commissioner Gross to approve $95,000 utilizing ARPA funds for the replacement of the technology.
Second.
A second from Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Item 14 is our budget item this morning. We have with us our auditor, Lori Johnson. It will join Mr. Larson.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning again, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Over the last, since I guess, early April, Darren started the process of identifying our employees for the year, and this past end of May, all the budget packets went out for our employees to begin their planning. They had about 3 weeks. At that time, they turned them into Lori. Lori collected them. We then set up our scheduled meetings with each department, went line through line of their budgets. Also, in addition to those requests, we also sent letters out to our external agencies who we provide funding for, some of which you've heard from. And so we accumulated those, and I think we have one more presentation next week from the Historical Society. Otherwise, we've heard all of our presentations. We generally come to you the first week of September with everything connected and rolled into a projected levy at this point, and then get direction from the board. Some of the other things that we also do, just as part of this discussion, is we usually provide a sales tax update. So the first page of your packet provides that update. Again, we have it from a historical view going back to 2016 actually, but full years in 17, 18. As you can see, this year we continue to see collections coming in fairly strong. We're at $2.7 million. If you recall, originally part of what the sales tax was to do was to collect a portion of the repayment for the law enforcement center and correctional facility. In 2022 was the first budget cycle that we fully funded the entire repayment process for those bonds through the sales tax. And so currently this year we are anticipating a need of about $3.7 million to do that. And as you can see, we are well on our way to receiving those dollars through the sales tax. Is there any questions? All right.
Questions? No questions? Okay.
All right, the second item that we generally bring forward during this discussion is our fund balance comparison from 20, in this case from 2020 to 2021. Although we haven't completed the audit process, we do have fairly estimated firm numbers here for at least for our discussions. And so I think when we look at our balances here, the main areas that we look at generally that are affected by levy are general, road and bridge, social service, the building fund, and internal service. If you look at the general fund balance, we did see a decrease in that fund balance of about $2.9 million. This was not unanticipated. Last year, we brought forward about $1.3 million to lower the levy. We also had about $713,000. If you recall, we did a land swap with the city of Moorhead for the 20 acres that the resource recovery facility is going on. In turn, they purchased our property on 15th Avenue North where we had the DMV and some of our storage. Because we sold that, we needed some additional storage, and so we had about $713,000 of funds that this board approved to purchase, make up the difference of that total cost of that building. And then we also had it was a timing issue in 2020. If you remember, the state of Minnesota allotted $1.1 million of business relief that came to us at the end of December, and we had to have it out by the end of January. And so we received it and was recognized in 2020, but was spent in 2021. So that is our reasoning behind the general fund deficit. Road and bridge is a timing, again, is a timing issue. We show revenues over expenditures of just over $2 million. Basically, that the payments didn't go out in 2021, and so that's the impact there. Social services had a $1.1 million revenues over expenditures. I think during Rhonda's budget presentation this year, she shared why that was. Most of that was impacted by the inability to fill positions, and so we saw some savings in not paying for the staff positions. And we also saw about I think it was right around $350,000 of services that they purchased, but because of COVID, the clients weren't able to go in and utilize those. Building funds, we had a number of projects that we expended the funds out of there this year. So we had a $165,000 shift there. In our internal service, we had about $1 million increase in that internal service fund. Public health, solid waste, the family service center, juvenile center all act as enterprise funds, so don't impact the levy, but we did see revenues over expenditures of $1.2 million in public health. Solid waste remained fairly flat. The family service center saw a loss of just about $200,000, and the juvenile center saw an increase of about $500,000. So that I'd yield for any questions on the fund balance.
Questions in regards to the fund balances from the board? Good.
The next document that we generally share with you at this point is just a summary of revenues expenditures by department year to date. We were able to run these through August. And so
Through the end of August?
Through the end of August, okay. Yes. And so we're 66% through the year. And so when you look at, again, our revenues generally lag anywhere from 2 to 3 months behind, so they're a little bit harder to challenge. Our focus generally falls within where the expenses are at for the year. If you take a look, there's nothing that really stands out significantly at this point. We did see an increase in demand for public defender services. We did see them, actually the county administrator budget is a higher than average, and what, if you recall, that's where our diversity position was paid out of, and so that subject to that increase. Otherwise, when we look at this, the emergency management increase has to do with COVID funding, and a lot of the areas down in the bottom half are one-time appropriations, and so they're going to see higher. Road and bridge, I think we saw some increases, again, construction costs, also additional gas costs that we experienced this year. And otherwise, I think we're right in that area. Solid waste management, I would highlight, of course, we have two projects that are going on, one of which is the landfill project that has gone past its past what was anticipated in spending, so we're still paying for that project. That's highlighted there. Does anybody have any other questions on the summary of revenues or expenses? Right now, we appear to be in a good position.
Questions? Certainly, there's a lot of information to digest, but I appreciate you covering that. If anyone has questions.
Or about the only thing we ask about is when something's way over, and I look at that emergency management, what is that, why is that way over?
So the emergency management, that's where the COVID funds, some of the COVID funds go through that budget line item, and so that's where we're seeing an increase there.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay,
All right.
Just an item, have we adjusted in here yet the ARPA pieces that we talked about last week, or is that a
So, Madam Chair, Commissioners, we did anticipate that the board would approve some of those items, and so we did remove majority of those. Some of the board actions are not here, and we can touch base on that as we go through this, the next packet.
Okay, thank you. All right.
All right, the next document is a summary of the 2023 tax levy by funds. To this point, you've been getting just kind of the department updates based on bringing them forward to the board. Today, you have the full packet. And so, again, we made different adjustments as we've gone through with each of our boards, each of our departments. The proposed, I guess we'll kind of generally just go through here. The general fund proposed for next year is $26,179,224. That is a 4% increase over last year. What you're going to see have the biggest impact here is our insurance is through here. We also have 221 employees who are eligible to receive steps at some point during 2023. And that is also in this area, along with the sheriff's budget, saw probably just about doubled in as far as their need for gas for next year. Road and bridge, again, is based off our 5-year plan of the in and out. There we're looking at $4,424,518. Our building fund is at $50,000. I think we've had some ongoing discussion in the building committee. This is kind of to take care of carpet paint, for example, throughout the county. One of the challenges that we've looked at is right now over at the Family Service Center, each wing from the second to the fifth floor, each wing is about 5,000 square feet. It costs about $50,000 to paint and carpet those areas. And so one of the things that maybe this isn't a good year to look at it, but something that we'll maybe want to look at is we've expanded to the correctional facility, law enforcement center, our government facility. We'll be adding the resource recovery center. So some of those different items just to look ahead of. Library, we heard the presentation this morning. Again, their request of 2.74%. We have debt retirements of one. The courthouse is no longer on the proposed levy, but we have other county projects, $493,395. And then social service fund request of $12,551,700, which is a couple $100,000, $220,000 increase over last year. That gives us a total levy proposed of $44,017,102. We did, as was mentioned, we do have the new request documents. So if you take a peek, page 89 and 90 should be right behind the tax levy document. is a summary of all the requests that have been made and presented before you during their department explanations. Just kind of as a refresher, the first item is a human resources subscription for $7,000. We currently have David Drowns and Associates provides HR directives, feedback on different challenges that we have. They've been a great addition to HR. It's allowed us to save funding from having to go to our labor attorneys on multiple occasions over the last few years. And so that is a request this year. Technology services, again, other professional services. When Rory was here, he identified that there were some licensing contracts that were initially provided no charge to us the first years. Those have expired, and so now we have additional $26,500 for those fees. Courthouse law enforcement, DMV grounds and buildings, as we've just mentioned. Over the last few years, we've had an increase of our campus buildings. Going back to 2016, Joe Olson had said that he would look and try to identify the different needs of the county as we move forward. With all the additions that we've had, we have not added any additional maintenance people. And so this would be an additional maintenance staff and some additional part-time staff to make sure that we can cover the additional buildings that we have. The Sheriff's Department, this is internal service to deal with the increased costs, both necessarily for the vehicles and for what we put in the vehicles. This request doesn't come from the sheriff, it's coming directly from Lori, and so we need to make sure that we make those adjustments. Same thing with corrections and internal service. I think during the budget presentation, Carrie talked about the request to move to a taser, a different taser system, which would require an additional $22,677. The appropriation for the Fair Board, this is a new request above and beyond of what their annual allotment request is. The Fair Board is in the process of trying to raise funds to upgrade their bathrooms and shower utilities at the fairgrounds. For those of you that were out there this year, it's probably long overdue. They could use an upgrade, and then they don't meet ADA requirements. And so, oh, sorry, Madam Chair.
Steve, I know maybe we've talked offline about this, but I really do feel that because that this request stems from some of the evaluation during a pandemic and not allowing safe sanitary spacings, this might be something that I think could qualify for ARPA.
Excuse me, Steve, what pages are you working on?
Yes, it's right.
Okay, thank you.
It's upside down, yeah.
Thanks for the.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Mojo. I think this should come before ARPA. And I would support that. When you do a one-time deal into their budget, then all of a sudden the next year it becomes part of that budget number. And if you haven't flagged that it was for a specific purpose, that becomes your new base. And sometimes our new base gets too big.
Okay.
And I think with that, I do know that there's some substantial outreach that they're doing with other entities to see if there's any additional funds they can utilize because of the ADA requirement component. So reaching back out to James to see what that number is, did they request it in the budget because really the need was 20,000 over 2 years or whatever. Let's make sure we get a better scope of what the actual need is for addressing that.
All right. The next item is a public health appropriations. As you recall, when Kathy came here, she had requested a number of items before you. This request is a net request. Some of those positions also had revenues that came with those requests, and so that would be $111,338. The appropriations for Chamber of Commerce, this would be the West Fargo West Fargo Moorhead Chamber. They had their original request that was before you earlier this month was $100,000. You approved $50,000 for the Ignite program today. We did leave this other $50,000 that had the concierge program that Shannon spoke about, and they also had another $25,000 for funding for essentially more a day at the Capitol, those types of, I guess, workings with St. Paul. And so that's what that explanation is. We had the senior coordination program, wasn't senior coordination, but transportation. I think that I'm in the process of talking with their executive director to get some additional information, very likely. We discussed this at ARPA. There will be a request that will come in before this board in the future. So we did remove that. Highway maintenance, the regular salaries regular. Justin came and presented as part of his budget to look to have some additional maintenance person for the grading and also removing snow in the winter. As we've kind of talked about here at the board, one of the challenges, the great thing about the development that we're seeing in rural Clay County is that adding that tax base and then people living where they want. The challenge for our highway department is being able to get in there with our machinery and then doing so in a timely fashion. And so that's just one portion of that request that Justin had. Highway administration, he also is looking for this is their copier year. We've kind of talked about maybe moving that into an internal service moving forward. And also maintenance highway equipment is an internal service impact also, as we've seen in many of our other areas. And the last part, I guess, is social services, but the board did take action on that today, I believe. And so we would be removing. So any questions on any of the new requests?
Questions from the board? No questions? All right.
All right. If the board were to approve the remaining new requests, we'd have to make the adjustment, but that would get us right around that $444,580,066 would be our total levy. This year, from a total county program aid that we'll be receiving $4,093,206 for a spread levy of $40,486,860. We did see a new construction adjustment of 1.2%, and so that would bring a net levy of 3.86%. Now, one of the things that I didn't mention that we have normally during this process is we have 9 bargaining units, which generally we've had them staggered between 2 and 3 years apart, and going into every budget process, we know what that COLA is going to be, at least from a standpoint of a COLA agreed upon with one of our unions. This year or last year with COVID and the uncertainty of what was going to happen, this board made the decision that we would kind of align all of our bargaining units up on 1 year, and so therefore we do not have a COLA at this point. What I can share with you is this year a 1% COLA based in this budget equals to about $350,604. And so as a part of that 1% COLA based on this budget, that also then equates to a 0.91 levy increase for every COLA percentage that is provided. Now, I know that I believe next week we're scheduled to meet in closed session with our labor attorney to have some discussions on that, so there doesn't have to be any discussion or comments made on that today. But just from the board's perspective, we did provide you some information of what a 1%, 2%, and so on would mean to that 3.86%. So with that, I would yield for any questions.
Okay, and certainly, I don't think we want to have too much of a discussion on that piece, but that really, knowing the 0.91 per percentage increase, in my time on this board, that's a huge wild card. And if for whatever reason, they're all at the same time right now, but that's a large portion of what the budget will be going forward in approving what the final or preliminary will be, so. Commissioner Campbell?
I have a few to start with. So the 350,604, that's 1% of a COLA would be, so how do we get 0.91? I'm curious as to how, I calculate that at the 0.82. I'm just curious how we.
I just take the increase of, I'm using last year's number though, not this year's.
Oh,
And so that's probably the difference, is that I use last year's levy and use that to.
Yeah, well, so if I take the 350,604 divided by the 42 million, I get
The
0.82.
38 million though is the number we need to use. Because that's the net number that gets spread. Yeah.
Oh, you did based on the net, okay.
Yeah.
I follow you, okay. But on the gross levy, it's 0.8.
Correct. Yeah, that would be correct.
Lori, can I ask you a little bit about the debt retirement for county projects at 493? Can you give us a little bit of a breakdown of what that is?
Well, that would just be for that new bond issue that we just did, that we issued along with the solid waste bonds. So
Okay.
it's those capital improvement bonds that we issued.
Okay, so I understand the capital improvement bond should be in there, but the solid waste bond issue,
Right, this is just the payment for the capital improvement bond. It was a shorter term.
okay.
And
That was,
so it was a pretty big number, bigger than our normal number for payoff.
okay, so that 493 doesn't, because solid waste alone,
That's totally separate, yeah.
it's more than that, it's,
Way more than.
okay. And is that like for 5 years?
I think it was 7.
7 years? Okay. And then, just a point of observation, and I bring this up every year, is that these, we're basing these 23 proposals based on what was a budgeted number last year. It has nothing to do with actual. And, and I think again, for 2021, we had, about another 1.2 million, I guess when I look at this, I see that 3.63, for example, as the levy before moving into new requests and the county program aid. That number could theoretically have been as high as 6.45% when you look at actual dollars spent versus what was budgeted.
When we put together the paperwork here, we are comparing budget to budget. But when we go through the budget with every department, we are looking at actuals to make sure, we look at the historical trends to make sure that even, our last year's budget was correct.
Yeah,
So even though what we're presenting is budget to budget,
And that's all, and I agree with that. But at some point in time, where do we get to consider, like we did last year? Because, you said, Steve in his report said that we used some of the revenues and expenditures from the previous year to buy down. So that would have been $2020 used to buy down the 2021 levy. Right?
22 probably.
Or, yeah, 2020's numbers to buy down 2022 levy. So then now we're at 2021's numbers, and are we using any of those revenues over expenditures?
Well, we actually went about $3 million to the negative in 2021 for the general fund.
And that was because of a shift in when we had to pay things.
And some of that stuff, some of it was a shift, some of it we purchased a building, and some of it was budgeted fund balance from previous years.
Okay. And, just to maybe start off this conversation, typically when we have this, like Steve said, we usually will have what has been probably an already agreed upon number for COLA based on what we had already done through negotiations that had been already approved for that year. So we use that as a baseline. Here we have nothing, but I think we're fooling ourselves if we're not going to be talking about COLA numbers. We're talking about these workforce issues, and we're talking about being able, we're going to have to really focus on retaining employees. And we're not going to talk about, we're not going to be able to retain employees if we're not competitive. And all indications are, when we hear from our supervisors coming in, I don't care which department you're from, it's we're not meeting the market. So we're already at a significant levy with not even discussion about what we're going to do for our employees. I'll leave it at that for right now.
Okay. Any other board questions? I just had a question in regards to the wind energy that's generated, that revenue.
Yeah, we just budgeted that in our unallocated, and typically we're gonna use that to pay off our law enforcement bonds.
Yep.
But that's not needed anymore, so it's just included as a revenue as part of our general fund.
Okay. And the reason I bring that up is, we're in the process of a large project, and I get that there's a little, it's different because of the enterprise piece component, but want to make sure that we continue to think about that one for utilization and maybe paying down something else as we go forward. Board questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner.
If there's no others, I
Yeah.
don't want to hog all the time here, but just noting then the internal service, and I'm going back to this page, Lori. And I'm noticing that we have, according to this, in the internal service fund balance, that is up a little over, that's about 1.1 million. Are there things that yet to come out of that why we're up 1.1 million?
It just is a matter of timing on when these biggest items are purchased, and most of that goes to Road and Bridge. So whether they're purchasing big motor graders or anything, and it just depends on when they're purchasing, because it could be a negative 1 million next year, just depending on the timing of those types of.
Sure. But if we look at the historical numbers here, in most cases, it raises a little bit or it stays. And we do, road graders are like 7 years, I get that, but, yeah. And then if we can maybe at some point in time see kind of a overall picture, for example, in solid waste. Right now, you look at that and it says, oh, we've got $15 million in there right now. If you look at that our fund balance has grown to that, but we have a lot of commitments out of there. Because we've already determined that, aren't we using like 3.5 of that for this current project?
Right.
And so maybe before December anyway, if we could kind of, it doesn't have to
Sure, absolutely.
It doesn't deal with the preliminary levy.
Yeah, we'll have, we've got our balance sheet that we can show, but also some of this is for post-closure costs that
Right.
we are required to reserve for, so we can come up, our balance sheet shows that.
If you could just kind of give us a recap of how those funds are committed and what isn't committed. One of the areas that this board did a few years ago is that we did take some dollars from that enterprise fund and shifted it to the general fund for reimbursement, basically for admin purposes. And I'm just curious as to if that could also be reviewed, if we're in a position to maybe do something more there.
Yeah, we do that every year. I believe it's 120,000 every year.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm wondering is, we do that every year, but every year, that 120 becomes something more, but we don't adjust that, right? So that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Further questions or discussions? Okay, Nothing else? Good? Okay, thank you very much for your work on this. I know it takes a lot to get to this point, but there's some moving parts. We'll keep marching forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Committee reports today, and because of the work session last week, it will be 2 weeks of reports. Commissioner Kaylee, would you like to start?
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. On the 24th, I attended the FMWF Chambers Foundation's press conference and celebration for the $9.62 million Economic Development Administration and Good Jobs Challenge grant that they were awarded. As Commissioner Ebbinger noted earlier, there were over 500 proposals submitted across the nation, and they were one of 32 selected. So a big honor for them, and they kind of laid out some of the work that they're planning to do with that money over the course of the next several years. On the 29th, I met with Representative Heather Keeler just to talk through some things coming up and the meetings that she was going to attend for the Children's and Adults Mental Health Local Advisory Councils. On the 30th, we all attended the work group where we discussed what it would look like if Clay County went self-insured instead of going with Blue Cross or another entity in the future. And there's lots of considerations, financial in particular, as to what that would look like, and we discussed how we can plan to be in a good place financially for that if we decide to go that route. We also talked about the Substance Abuse Crisis Center and looked at proposals from construction managers and discussed who we will be interviewing for those. We selected our top 3, and those interviews will be coming up. Later that day, our crisis response mobile mental health stakeholder meeting met. It was a really good discussion from a lot of parties. We had social services, law enforcement, Sanford, Lakeland, all in the room here to talk about what has been happening with mobile mental health so far this year, what that utilization has been. We shared on your desks this morning, there was this quarterly data from mobile mental health on what calls they've been receiving and what services they've been providing for the first 2 quarters of this year. We also talked a little bit about their regular grant, multi-year grant that was just submitted following that meeting. And then a mini grant that was also submitted with the intent of adding additional staff specifically to support law enforcement response to mental health crises. We're waiting to hear back on those grants, and that will probably happen later this fall. The 31st, I attended the Moorhead Business Association meeting. I hadn't been there in a while, and so I just wanted to stick my face in there. I also shared about the training coming up from our Early Childhood Initiative on how to talk to new Americans and refugees about mental health and eliminate stigmas. That training is coming up on October 7th, and it is free and will include a light supper. On September 1st, I attended our intergovernmental committee meeting. We had a presentation about the Library and Community Center project and tax initiative that'll be on the budget, or on the ballot, that is, in November from the City of Moorhead presented that. And then we did facility updates there as well. Later that day, I attended our Children's Mental Health Local Advisory Council. Representative Keeler attended that meeting, and we had a really vibrant discussion from providers in the area on barriers that they're experiencing to providing the services that they want and need to provide for our folks. Some of the things that we talked about is just the lack of crisis bed space, the lack of psychiatric residential treatment facilities for kids. We're having to send kids to different counties to receive care. It's often really difficult to find a space for them. There are only 3 or 4 psychiatric residential treatment facilities in the state of Minnesota. None of them are in our area. And so that's just a really difficult situation for our families. It was kind of an intense conversation, and we didn't get to cover all of the areas that we wanted to cover with Representative Keeler, and so we decided that we're just going to put together like a Google file to share a lot of notes from those providers and our social services department so that she can hear what the actionable items are. She's really interested in meeting again within the next couple weeks, potentially to get some legislation written so it's ready to go in January should she win the election. I also met with Sarah Dixon Hackey, who's doing cultural diversity work through public health, to talk about some assorted projects that we have and overlap there. And then on the 2nd, I attended the Cass Clay Food Commission First Friday's meeting. There was we highlighted food banks and emergency food services in the area. So Great Plains Food Bank and the Emergency Food Bank were there, and we had a discussion on what people are needing and using and some of the barriers that they have currently to keeping their shelves full and to distributing food to folks in the community. That concludes my reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cayley. Commissioner Gross.
Tuesday after our last regular meeting, with highway tracking, we discussed the county state 8 Highway 1, which we would discuss today. We covered that today. They talked about the new shops that are being built. Georgetown's going okay. Hewlin, they're not going to be finished till next spring. Comstock, they found contaminated materials. So we're going to run into problems there. I mean, to get that all taken care of. Talked about the cold storage. The tent is down and they're starting to work on the concrete barriers. Salt tent also is being worked on. I mean, excuse me, they didn't award the bids because of contract issues there. So, and they had a meeting with Shiloh Wall and Nathan Gannon on, they're talking about changing I-94 to 6 lanes of traffic. It's a future thing they're looking at. They're looking at changing some overpasses and trying to, or probably making an overpass in Dilworth and close County 45 railroad crossing. Looked on the 5-year plan, and there's still open positions, an assistant engineer, maintenance worker, and 2 variable plow drivers. So if anybody's interested in some jobs, there's some availability in jobs in the highway department. The work group, where of course, everybody was here. We talked about the self-insurance and also the review of the substance abuse crisis facility. I also went to the drug court graduation. It is surprising how many people are being involved in that drug court. They must be increasing their numbers quite a bit. Looked like a lot of people going through drug court that day. And they did have a graduation that day. And then we also had on last Wednesday, the detox review. They already talked about the fire protection, plumbing, HVAC, which I wasn't involved in, but I came in more in a general discussion on future things that are going to be coming up. Getting a cost estimate, which is coming up September the 8th to the 21st, somewhere in that area. And a schematic design package is going to be due also September the 8th. I guess those are my meetings.
Thank you, Commissioner Gross. Commissioner Campbell.
Thank you. On August 23rd, I also attended the Highway Tracking Committee meeting that Commissioner Gross just informed us well about. The one thing I'd want to add about that 6th lane of traffic issue, what we're talking, where that would be from the Red River to Highway 336. That's what was looking at there, and they were just looking for support from the county board on that, so. Then on the August 24th, I attended the Prairie Lake Solid Waste meeting. We reviewed a drug and alcohol policy. So Nicole Hansen, the Otter County Administrator, came for that board and gave a presentation on the current plan that Otter County has and what the new proposal would be. Our plant manager there believes that we should implement something like that, so that's going to be on our next agenda. Everything else in the plant is going well. I don't really have anything else to report on that one. On Thursday, the 25th, the Solid Waste Advisory Committee meeting met, and we introduced Corey Bang to the SWAC committee as the new solid waste manager. We received a resource recovery campus update from Leon, and then we had a perm update and general landfill information that Corey provided us. Then that same day, we had the Morehead Clay County Joint Powers Authority, MCC JPA meeting. We approved 4 relocation housing differential payment offers, and we got an update on the schedule for the southern embankment of Reach 4, where that would be the area that's on the Minnesota side. And that's pretty much that. Diversion Authority Board of Authority meeting was also that same day. We got an executive director's report. And then we had some discussion about the changing the different committees, which Joe Paulson talked about this morning. On the 29th, we had a ARPA meeting and several items. Some of them we discussed here today. I think most of them we talked about today and what our plan was moving forward. I attended the Clay County Intergovernmental Committee meeting that Commissioner Cayley talked about, and we did get facility updates. Phase 1, one of the things that local people are interested in Morehead Public Schools is their Phase 1 of the project is scheduled to be complete in August of 2023 with a potential move-in of January of 2024. That's the preliminary numbers that were provided to us on that one. There continues to be things moving forward in a positive way in the DGF school projects. One school is doing well and one school is a little bit behind based on some issues. But all things seem to be going well. And then we will be planning our intergovernmental retreat in November. And then I just wanted to mention that I was able to stop in and say thank you to Michelle Hughes, who was a county employee who retired, and her retirement was, I believe, her last day was last Thursday or Friday, and I stopped in and said hello, and she had 37 years with Clay County, a long time, so.
Fantastic.
That concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Campbell. Commissioner Ebinger?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wednesday, the 24th, I attended the FMWF Chamber Foundation press conference they had at the Armory Event Center, which was, I addressed earlier and that Commissioner Cayley also covered very well. We did have Senator Tina Smith and North Dakota Governor Bergman there to address this, and it's going to be a good program, and we're lucky to have it here, given the number of applicants and the the light number they managed to get in grants for it. Later that day, I attended virtually the Diversion Authority Finance Committee. Expenses are under budget quite a bit. The executive director gave us a briefing on that, but it's because some of the PPP loan budget has been kicked to next year. They'll be running up the activity next year as things get moving with the public-private partnership. We passed a couple of items that went to the board as far as contract actions, and then looked at the audit for Hyde Bailey. No surprises in that. Thursday, the 25th, I went to the Diversion Board of Authority meeting, as described by Commissioner Campbell. Nothing I can add to that. And Tuesday, we had our work group, which has already been addressed, and that completes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Ebinger. 2 weeks ago, I also tuned into the Prairie Lakes Committee meeting that Commissioner Campbell has reported on. I attended the ARPA committee meeting where we did talk about those half-year funded items, making sure that we clean that up to address it through the end of '23. Do appreciate the board's action on that. We did have some discussion in regards to another application that kind of came at the end of a report about the dental clinic. There was a potential ask on that. We did feel that because of additional supports that were happening for that, we didn't support that request, but certainly do support it. This board supports it in other ways. I also attended the Mobile Mental Health Committee, or the Mobile Mental Health discussion with so many different partners from the area. I attended the Detox Planning Committee meeting that Commissioner Gross did report on. Lots of technical items going into the formation of what that plan looks like, and certainly will be helpful as we move forward with the project, but also during the interviews that are slated for next week. Last week, I did go to the Moorhead Midday Lions meeting. I was encouraged to attend that and present on issues that are going on in Clay County. And then just an item of note, the Clay County SWCD Fall Tour will be happening this Thursday, and that is advertised. If any board members want to go, that is a really great opportunity to see so many different projects that the SWCD have going on. It really does help the discussion when Kevin and staff present here to kind of get an idea of what exactly is being implemented countywide, so that's helpful. But that does conclude my report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the 23rd, I participated in highway tracking that Commissioner Gross and Commissioner Campbell have addressed. I apologize if I missed it. We did talk about box culverts projects. The challenge that they're having is attaining those. We're probably going to end up having to push those back into next spring. On the 24th, we had county management. We talked about MCIT scheduling of our items. We have a good program in place, but we're looking to kind of lock that down a little more. And so we're coordinating with Joe Olson and Rory Schmitz and working closely with our department heads on an annual basis to ensure everything gets on the schedule. We also talked about budget 2023 and also workforce challenges, succession planning. I think to Commissioner Campbell's comments, so, one of the things that we asked what they're hearing, and some of our employees are reporting, for example, that they're having to get additional jobs now to make sure that they're getting their ends meet. We on the 24th, I met with Nathan Bang from Sharp Insurance, just sharing information about organizations that are self-insured, specifically in regards to medication. I'd shared at this point we're in contract, but just wanted to have information provided. On the 24th, we had a board agenda, discussion on a board agenda builder. I think this fall we're going to be moving to that program. It's offered through our Civics Plus platform, which will hopefully help as far as organizing the agendas, and also then provides a framework for meeting minutes at the end of each meeting. 25th, I participated in the SWAC meeting that Commissioner Mojo and Commissioner Campbell have addressed. Also had met with Darren on some budget discussions and union negotiations. That afternoon, I talked with Robert Wilson in regards to the Red River Regional Dispatch Center JPA. I think there's a push for that to be brought forward here in the next couple of weeks by all of the entities, and so we'll be having more discussion on that. I'll also talk to him about some in North Dakota. There's county probation, and there's also the Division of Juvenile Services. DJS is a state probation agency. Those kids they also utilize our facility from time to time, generally as they're awaiting shipment out to their placement in Mandan. Sometimes they end up staying in our facility for a week or two, and so we're working with James to try to establish a funding mechanism that separates it from Cass County. I also talked with James O'Donnell after that and had some additional discussion. 25th, we had the MCC JPA meeting with Commissioner Campbell and Commissioner Mojo have discussed. On the 29th, we had an ARPA meeting that also has been discussed. Participated in the work group that's been discussed. Participated on the 30th with the crisis response stakeholder meeting that's been addressed. On the 31st, Lori Johnson and I met with Corey Bang in regards to the solid waste budget and staffing needs. Lori was in the process of putting those staff into that budget. I know our commissioners on the SWAC wanted to see that, so we'll be forwarding that to you very near future. It's important making sure that we look at tipping fees for 2023. On 31st, we also have the design meeting substance use facility that's been addressed. On the 1st, we have participated in the intergovernmental meeting that Commissioner Cayley and Commissioner Campbell have also addressed. On the 1st, I met Rhonda Porter established a meeting back in 2021. The legislature set aside some funding for local homeless prevention for youth 24 years or younger. That funding is going to become available in July of 2023 finally, and so we met with a number of area agencies that deal with youth homelessness in hopes of getting ideas and needs for the youth. On 21st, we finalized interviews for next week. Again, it's advertised next Monday. We have a meeting at 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. as commissioners, if you could maybe be here a few minutes early that day, and then again Tuesday from 1 and 2 o'clock for those interviews. The second met with Lori and some budget planning that we presented today. On that afternoon, I briefly went out and toured Roll-Log Threshing Bee with Sheriff Empteen, kind of went through their staffing plan. It was a beautiful day.
I heard you went to the wrong gate.
And I went to the wrong gate. So I got my steps in, for sure. Just of note that there is a booster clinic tomorrow from 9:15 a.m. to 9:15 a.m. to 1 p.m. and again from 2 to 4. Again, there's shots available for 6 months, as young as 6 months. And also during our board meeting today, we did get the registration and hotels for AMC annual conference in December. I see we're in the DoubleTree this year, so maybe not as big of a deal for hotels, but if you let Colleen and I know, if you plan to attend,
I think those are cancelable, right? I mean, so maybe today, make sure and let Colleen know so we can get that on reserved.
Yeah. Book mine.
Which one was that?
AMC conference in December.
In December, yeah.
All of us. Thanks, Colleen.
All right, that concludes my report.
Okay. Thanks, Steve.
Also talking about AMC, the one on next Wednesday, that start at 1 p.m.?
I think the rural caucus meeting starts at 2, I think.
2 or 2:30, okay. I got a doctor appointment in the morning. Okay.
Okay, anything else? Brian? Colleen? Okay, we are adjourned.